Well, I don't know if Penn State fans are exactly going to be sending Sharon Moore Christmas cards, but there is the win in Columbus, of course, that paved the way. Penn State and Oregon in the first expanded, we could say, Big Ten championship game, and of course, the first for the Nittany Lions since 2016. We got Marty Leap here from Penn State Rivals. Check out his work right there, Penn State Rivals with Marty each and every week. Marty, how's it going?
Pretty good, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Before we get to this matchup against the Ducks, there was an exchange between James Franklin and Mike Loxley at the end of the Maryland game. Penn State won 44-7. Maryland scored on the second play of the game, I believe, after a fumble, and Penn State obviously blew them out after that, scored a late touchdown. I did not see the end of the game. I did hear James Franklin's comments from the podium, and if they're accurate, they seem to be a serviceable explanation as to what happened. We put the 3s and 4s in, and we're going to allow those guys to play football. They have earned the right when they can finally get into a football game to actually play football, and you actually played a defense at cover zero that gave us opportunities to make football plays. Otherwise, we were doing everything we could to keep the score down.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly how it went. I think any situation here between James Franklin and Mike Loxley is always going to garner some attention because I think it's well known in the college football world that they are not exactly fans of each other, nor is James Franklin a fan of the University of Maryland. But yeah, that's what it was. There was an interception with about a minute or so left that Penn State returned down about the 10-yard line on first down. They ran the ball, lost 2 or 3 yards, about got their running back killed. Maryland stayed in cover 2. They threw against it, which is what you would do. Like you said, they were playing football. It was Penn State's 3s and 4s. I have to go back and rewatch the play, but if I remember correctly, Penn State had 3 walk-ons on the field for this play against Maryland's starting defense. And like James said, you're going to give your guys a chance to play, right? They work hard. They deserve this opportunity. You don't become a better player by going into the game and just sitting on the ball. And, also in the era of the transfer portal, a guy like Bo Prabula, you want to give him the chance to actually throw the ball and play because that increases the odds of a guy like Bo Prabula not transferring if Drew Aller decides to come back next year. So there's a lot of factors there. I think a lot of it was probably just pent-up frustration on Loxley's end. You're 4-8. They have Maryland finish year losing like 7 of their last 8 games or whatever it was. You just got absolutely blown out by a guy that you're not, best of friends with to begin with. So yeah, but I don't think James Franklin did anything wrong. I would expect any coach in any situation to do the exact same thing there. Give your guys a chance to play, especially against the other team starters. And if they want to run that kind of defense, and even on that front, that's how you even teach, a young quarterback like Bo Prabula, like, hey, when you see cover 2, this is what you want to check to because it's how you're going to exploit it. So yeah, I had no issues with it.
Got Marty Leap on the line from Penn State Rivals. Please like the video here at the Voice of College Football and subscribe. We talk college football, obviously, all the time, every day. And we've got Penn State and Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Not necessarily an odd matchup or anything that was not out of the realm of possibility to start the year. We're talking about 2 of the top 5 teams in the country, but Ohio State was a 3-touchdown favorite to dispose of Michigan and set up a rematch. So you got to feel to a certain extent, Marty, that this was a bit of a gift. I'm sure you weren't necessarily counting on this happening.
Yeah, no, I didn't think Ohio State was going to lose. I didn't think it was impossible either, like a lot of people seem to think. It's just, first and foremost, Michigan matches up really well with Ohio State. Ohio State's offensive line right now is a mash unit, and Michigan's defensive tackles might be the best defensive tackle pair in the country. You knew Michigan was that this game was their season. They're what do they care about a bowl game when you're defending national champions and you're 7-5? You don't care about the Pinstripe Bowl, whatever it may be. But if you were in wreck Ohio State's season, you feel pretty good about it. And also, I firmly believe that with Ryan Day, Michigan is as much of a mental roadblock as anything else at this point. And you just watch the way he coached that game. He seemed like he was coaching scared, and I think that was a big part of it. So, yeah, I didn't expect Ohio State to lose, but I also wasn't shocked that Ohio State lost. And yeah, no, here we are, Penn State for the first time in 8 years, getting ready to head back to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship.
And Marty, while Penn State and Oregon did not play, I'm going to have a video, folks, come out here in the next few days because I've run all the numbers on common opponents. I enjoy doing this. A lot of people say, oh, this doesn't mean anything. But at the same time, I've looked at these uh, type matchups when there are a lot of common opponents. And in this matchup, there's seven teams that they both played. And the numbers start to mean something. That doesn't mean that it's going one way or the other. But the team that played better against the common opponents, I guarantee, is about an 80% certainty of winning. Again, if there are enough common opponents. Aside from the Ohio State game, which is the obvious, I don't want to call it an outlier because nothing crazy happened in either game. They were both competitive games, but Oregon beat Ohio State. Penn State lost to Ohio State. Oregon pretty much played statistically even with Ohio State. Ohio State had not a domination of statistics against Penn State, but were the clear better team, played to their advantage the game. They were like plus 80 or 90 yards, something like that. But the rest of these opponents, when you add it all together, I was surprised to see that Penn State was just as dominant against these 7 opponents as Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, I think one that jumps right to my mind is that game. Both of them played at Camp Randall at night, and Penn State completely smothered Wisconsin in the second half, won that game going away. In the first half, the only reason it was as close as it was because Wisconsin was winning the field position battle, as opposed to Oregon, who had to hang on for dear life coming down the end of that game. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think that they're two very evenly matched teams. I mean, I think Oregon's the better team. Don't get me wrong. I think that they should be favored as they are. I think that, I'd probably sit here, and if I had to pick, well, I think the best team in the country is, I'd probably pick Oregon. But I don't think it's impossible for Penn State to win this game. Like you said, 2 of the 5 best teams in the country. I think they're clearly 2 of the 5 best teams in the country, in my opinion. I feel confident saying the national champion will be, one of the 3 Big Ten schools we've discussed, Georgia or Texas. So yeah, I think it's an even match. I think it's going to be a great football game. And yeah, the Ducks are favored, and they should be. I think they're the better team, but I don't think this is a game where, Penn State has no chance of winning or anything of the sort.
I'm sure it's gotten its way to you at some point, and maybe more so than I've heard it, but I've been hearing this since the college football playoff rankings were first released, and even before that in the AP poll, that Penn State's overrated. They're overranked. They haven't beaten anyone. Even when you bring up teams like Illinois, who has now stretched their season out to 9-3. Oh, well, who have they beaten? You can play that game with almost everyone in the country.
Yep.
Illinois is a pretty good football team. If you go 9-3 in the Big Ten, and when you're out of conference games, so I think it's that people view Penn State as a good team, but they're not explosive enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the lack of the explosiveness in the offense, and which is something I think a lot of people expected Andy Kotelnicki to fix, and it's been much better this year than last year. I know it's not probably not what people want, and you don't see it. And I think part of the reason too that creates this image of the explosiveness is whenever the star of your offense is a tight end. I feel like that kind of just brings some negative connotations or belief or whatever with it. But yeah, I'm with you on, I've heard a lot of it. I heard of they're overrated, they're this, they're that. And I would tell you, if you want to say they haven't beaten anybody and that they're overrated, okay. But tell me who Texas has beaten, just to use an example. The best team they played was Georgia, and Georgia absolutely throttled them. The best team Penn State played is Ohio State, and Penn State was converting one of 2 golden red zone opportunities into 7 points away from winning that game. So, like you said, you probably could play that game with just about every team in the country. Well, their best one's so yeah, but who did that team beat? I like I said, I think Penn State, eye test included, record included, they've to me have proven they're one of the 5 best teams in the country this year. And I do think too, some of the perception, and this is part of the reason why making this game I think is important, is for so many years the perception of a James Franklin Penn State has been, oh, they're good, but they can't get back to the Big Ten championship. They can't get to the playoff. They can't do this. Well, they're back in the Big Ten championship game. They're going to be in the playoff for the first time. I think even those things, can go a long way for just the perception of the brand and of your program to be able to get into these games and have these opportunities and play on these stages.
So, Marty, since the playoff is wrapped up, how important is this game past a perception of quieting people that are going to criticize them, especially if they lose by a couple scores, that they don't belong? but is there a more tangible reason to win this game? Of course, you get to hang a banner and people count Big Ten championships. And, that's something that's brought up at some point. Oh, how many Big Ten championships have you won? Well, the number's 5 instead of 4, whatever the number is. But beyond that, is there, how would you evaluate the importance of winning this game or playing extremely well?
Yeah, that's a valid point. And that's something that's been discussed a lot in Penn State circles, even leading up to last week. A lot of people were debating, do you even really want to play in the Big Ten championship and have to play that extra game? Well, to me, first and foremost, if you win it, you get a first round bye. That's one less game you have to win in the playoffs. To me, that alone is, pretty important thing. I'm sure if this is the first year for the college playoff like this, but I'm sure if you look in the NFL, for example, the correlation between teams who get a first round bye and either reaching or winning the Super Bowl, I'm sure those numbers are higher because that's one less game you have to play. And secondly, I think just getting there is also important because I have felt all along, excuse me, especially with the season unfolding the way it did within the Big 12 and within the ACC, that the SEC and Big 10 runner-up are almost assuredly going to be the 5 and 6 seeds. Maybe if you're Penn State, absolute worst case scenarios, you get slotted at the 7 if they still put up. But that falls more favorably for you than in your seating, right? Let's say you're the 5 and you draw whoever comes out of the Big 12 or Boise or whoever in the first round, and in the second round you can turn around and play, a 3-loss Clemson or SMU. Not a knock on those teams, but teams that you don't view as being in the same stratosphere as a Georgia, as a Texas, Oregon, probably even Notre Dame. So I think that no matter what happens Saturday night, getting to this game, that alone improves the floor on their seeding in the playoff, and it definitely raises the ceiling because I think the winner of that game, if Oregon wins it, obviously they're going to be the number 1 overall seed. If Penn State wins, I think they've got a legit argument for that number 1 seed, even if Texas beats Georgia. Now, if Texas beats Georgia, I think it winds up Texas because they can pull the we beat everybody in our schedule card, but then you're the 2 seed. So again, you get a more favorable matchup. And most importantly, that's one less playoff game you have to win. And I understand people are going to point at injuries and this and that, but if you win this game, yeah, you had to play an extra game this week, but you still get that extra week off just at the end of December instead of the beginning of December. So yeah, to me, for all those reasons, getting to this game, especially if you can win it, like you said, even put aside the perception talk, the brand talk, all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of tangible positives to being in this game when it comes to playoff seeding.
And for as much as Penn State's been in this thing the entire season and expected to play in the 12-team field, I don't think many people were anticipating this could be the number 1 seed in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But it may turn out that way. So this game against Oregon, is there anything in particular that scares you? Do you think they're at a disadvantage? The perception there, and it may be reality, is obviously Oregon's more explosive. So we go back to that word.
Yeah, the tie back into the explosive talk, I think one thing that worries you if you're Penn State is your receivers. They've been a problem most of the year. They've shown flashes at times. We've not seen it consistently. And now you've got Trey Wallace, who's your clear number 1 receiver, who did not play against Maryland. The way James Franklin is with injuries, we're not going to know until they snap the ball on Saturday night if Trey's going to play or not, because he tried to warm up and give it a go against Maryland and couldn't. Now, how much of that was, hey, this is Maryland, we're going to win by 5-6 touchdowns, whether you play or not, as we saw, go rest it up so you're ready for next Saturday. That's a real possibility. But if you don't have Trey Wallace, I think that worries you because Oregon's defense is very good, obviously. It's not a defense where you can consistently put together these 8, 9, 10 play drives and march down the field and score. You've got to pop some big plays. So maybe you see Omari Evans, who's averaging 20 yards a catch this year, play a bigger role. Evans only has 18 receptions. 4 of them have gone for at least 45 yards, though. So that deep play threat is there with him. I think that's one area you worry if you're Penn State. I think the other area you worry, which may sound odd to just people listening to this who don't follow Penn State because the offensive line's been pretty good this year. You worry about your offensive line against Oregon's defensive line because A, that Oregon defensive line's good. It is really good. It might be the best in the country. And B, your offensive line is pretty banged up right now. Against Minnesota, you lost your starting right tackle, Anthony Donka, who is probably your best offensive lineman. He's out for the year with a knee injury. and your starting left guard, Vega Ione, who's probably been your second best offensive lineman this year, each of the last 2 weeks has kind of been in and out of the game battling something. So, you need that offensive line to play well, and you would feel a lot better about that if your offensive line was 100%. And regardless of what condition Vega's in on Saturday, because he's going to play. He's been playing, just dealing with whatever it is he's got going on. You don't have your right tackle in Donka, and the backup there's Nolan Rucci. Nolan Rucci sounds familiar to anybody following. Former 5-star recruit. His dad, Todd, played at Penn State, was a star offensive lineman for the Patriots in the 90s. And Nolan went to Wisconsin out of high school, but transferred back to Penn State prior to this year and has had a really strong season for Penn State. Is a good run blocker, but does struggle with athleticism and bend and pass protection, which could be a problem on Saturday. So, yeah, I think if you're Penn State, those are the two areas you worry most about is your receivers against a very good secondary, especially because your receivers have struggled this year, as well as your offensive line, which has not struggled for the most part. It's played extremely well most games. Going up against a very talented defensive line, but the main reason you worry about that offensive line is because of some of the injuries you're dealing with there right now.
Please like and subscribe, folks, and check out Marty's work at Penn State Rivals. We do have National Signing Day moved up 2 weeks, and so it's December 4th on Wednesday. Anything in particular that's hanging in the balance for Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, Penn State continuing to try and make some late moves here. I mean, their class right now, it's very solid. It's not quite as strong as been some recent years. The Rivals, we still have ranked the 16th best class in the country, which I think if you're saying, hey, our class currently ranked 16th is not quite as good as we're used to, that just kind of speaks more volumes to the level you recruit at. Part of that is because Max Granville, who was a top 100 defensive end in the class, reclassified and is now a freshman on the team. So if you put him back in the class, you move up a couple spots. But over the weekend, they hosted Bryce Baker, a top 100 quarterback recruit who is committed to North Carolina. He's someone Penn State has been pursuing for a while, but he was completely sold on North Carolina as long as Mac Brown was going to be there. Well, that changed some things. So I think they're making a late push there. I personally think Baker probably doesn't sign Wednesday because he is still trying to kind of sift through this and probably waiting to see what direction Carolina goes with their head coaching hire. That's certainly a name to watch. Andrew Olish, another top 100 recruit, an in-state kid at tight end who's committed to Michigan, but Penn State has been all over him ever since he committed. He is expected to sign this week, but probably not on Wednesday, probably not till later in the week. So I think that's another name to watch there. I think Penn State's going to add another tight end in this class regardless, because if they don't get Olish to flip, Brian Kordovich is a name to watch, a tight end from Ohio who took an official visit to Penn State this past weekend, had been committed to Purdue, has since decommitted from Purdue. I think it's just going to depend on if they flip Olish, he's their guy as a second tight end. If they don't, they'll bring Kordovich on board. I know Kordovich is not as highly rated as you would expect for a Penn State tight end potentially, but I know he has really good testing numbers, which the staff values. I mean, look at Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren was a low 3-star quarterback when he flipped from Virginia Tech to Penn State. I think if there's one position that this staff has deserved to get all and any benefit of the doubt on, it's definitely tight end with the run they've been on since starting with Mike Gesicki and since then. So I expect them to add another tight end, rather it's Kordovich or Olish. Bryce Baker's a name to watch as well. Continue to push there. Trying to flip him from North Carolina, that they're not going to stop recruiting him until he signs or enrolls elsewhere. So other than that, should be pretty drama-free. Penn State's done a really good job. They've always done a really good job under James Franklin, kind of getting their classes locked up before the end of the summertime. So then in the fall, that's just one less thing the staff has to worry about. But yeah, it should be, like I said, maybe not quite as strong as some recent classes, but still a good class, still easily a top 20 class. And what's important about it is cornerback, offensive line, some of the more important positions on the field are some of the positions that are strongest in this class.
And while the entire team is doing a little bit more traveling than anticipated with this trip to Indianapolis, Tyler Warren may have another trip to take out to New York City. So what do you, I don't know that you're really into the Heisman talk. I don't know, but you kind of have to be when your tight end's that good. But I know James Franklin has been promoting that, which I completely understand. Do you anticipate he's going to be a finalist?
I'll be curious to see. I mean, to me, if you're the most important player, by far the most important player on a top 3 to 4 team in the country, and you're doing what he's doing, stats wise, playing all these different positions, you should be. I don't have a Heisman vote. If I did, I've said I would put him number 3 behind Hunter and Ashton Genty. I mean, I think Travis Hunter is going to win the award, and he should, because he's doing. I made a comparison recently. He's like the Shohei Ohtani of college football. He's doing things that have never been done before and doing them at an extremely high level. I think Warren should be a finalist. It's not just the stats for me with him. It's what he does for this offense, playing quarterback, lining up at receiver, being an inline blocker, just being everything for this team, running the ball, throwing the ball. We've seen him punt the ball. He has done it all. I think he should be a finalist. I don't know that he will be. I think it probably hinges on how many finalists there are this year, which I think could work in his favor, because I don't think it's going to be like a runaway like we've seen some years. I think you're going to see the vote pretty well distributed amongst those 3 guys, and Cam Ward, maybe Dylan Gabriel, which, whenever you get the vote distributed that much, it will increase the amount of players who are finalists who hit that threshold. So I think he's got a good shot. I definitely think he should be. Whether he is or not, that's another question. And again, I think it's a go back to the perception of this offense, where you kind of get a certain perception about an offense where the centerpiece is a tight end. I think, again, as a Heisman voter or whatever it may be, you kind of have preset perceptions of what a tight end is and what a tight end is supposed to be. And he's been so much more than that for this team this year. There's absolutely no way they're playing for a Big Ten championship on Saturday without Tyler Warren. I don't think they're even in a position to make the college football playoff without Tyler Warren. So I think he should be a finalist. I don't know if he will be, but we'll find out.
As Marty says, Penn State gunning for a first Big Ten championship since 2016 when they beat Wisconsin, taking on number 1 Oregon. Marty, as always, appreciate you being here, dropping the knowledge on us.
Absolutely, Mark. I'm sure we'll talk soon.